A third group of hostages from the Gaza Strip have been freed by Hamas on Sunday. This includes a 4-year-old American girl whose parents were killed in the Hamas terror attack on Israel. After the third release on Sunday, more than 50 hostages have been released, and that raises the prospect that more captives could be set free amidst a fragile ceasefire. The 17 hostages released by Hamas on Sunday were seized when the terrorists raided Israel on the 7th of October. Among those released were 3 Thai nationals, 1 Russian, and the little American girl Abigail Edan. She's a dual American-Israeli citizen who was kidnapped from a kibbutz in the south. She marked her 4th birthday in captivity in Gaza on Friday. With both Israel and Hamas poised to resume the fighting, a collapse of the agreement might have quickly led to the resumption of hostilities. Those hostilities have already killed thousands of people. It might have also choked off desperately needed supplies for the besieged civilian population in Gaza. The first set of trucks carrying humanitarian aid made their way from Egypt into Gaza in these last few days as part of this ceasefire deal. But in an interesting twist, late Sunday, responding to an offer by Israel to add 1 extra day to the ceasefire for every 10 hostages that it released, Hamas said that it was interested in extending the ceasefire agreement. The Palestinian armed group said it was willing to extend this temporary ceasefire with Israel after the current 4-day pause in fighting is over. Israel too welcomed the offer. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a video statement soon after the Hamas offer. In that statement, he noted that there was already an outline for the possibility of freeing an additional 10 hostages for every day of peace. He also added that he welcomed an extension in this pause in hostility. In addition to the pause in the fighting, the deal, which was negotiated over the last many weeks by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, included humanitarian aid for Gaza. There had been speculation over how smoothly the exchange of prisoners would proceed on Sunday after Hamas threatened to postpone the second round of hostages for prisoners trade. Hamas had claimed that Israel had reneged on parts of the agreement relating to humanitarian aid, but after many hours of delay on Saturday and on Sunday, the exchange went ahead late Sunday evening. President Joe Biden of the United States has said that the chances are very real that the pause could open the door to a longer ceasefire. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, whose country played a crucial role in these negotiations, told the Financial Times that the truce could be extended if Hamas was able to use this pause to try and locate additional hostages. Some of these hostages have been held by other armed groups, not necessarily Hamas. He said that more than 40 women and children were believed to be held captive in Gaza, not by Hamas, but by other jihadi groups. More than 240 hostages, a large number of them Israeli citizens, but also a significant number of foreigners, are said to be in custody in Gaza. Rough estimates also suggest there are around 8,000 Palestinians who are currently in Israeli jails. Israel released the latest batch of 39 prisoners as part of this exchange deal. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the country's troops in the Gaza Strip Sunday, 3 days into the pause in fighting. He vowed that Israel is going to continue until the end, until victory is achieved. It was not immediately clear exactly when or where Netanyahu conducted this visit. Information about that trip was withheld by the Israeli government until he left the Gaza Strip because of security reasons. It is likely that he traveled to the northern part of Gaza, where the Israeli military has established control. The trip was Netanyahu's first to Gaza since the Israeli ground invasion began more than a month and a half ago. He also became the first Israeli Prime Minister to go to Gaza in more than 20 years. Those who traveled with him included his national security advisor, his military secretary, and the Israeli military deputy chief of staff. There is extreme domestic pressure on the Netanyahu government to get the hostages released, even if that means scaling back the military operations in Gaza. A day after the first exchange of hostages and prisoners between Israel and Hamas, thousands of Israelis gathered in front of the central military headquarters in Tel Aviv. They wanted to keep the pressure on the government to prioritize the return of all the hostages instead of resuming the military action in Gaza. This is the fourth week in a row where we've seen demonstrations calling for the Netanyahu government to make the freeing of the hostages as its top priority. But it's not going to be simple. There are quite a few complications therein. A longer ceasefire will also increase diplomatic pressure on Israel not to resume the extensive bombarding that it's been indulging in of the Gaza Strip over the last 50 days. Time works against Israel. On the one hand, you want all the hostages out, knowing that you can't get them out militarily. On the other hand, Israel cannot afford to completely lose the momentum in this war. An Israeli military official said that the country was committed to freeing as many hostages as possible, but he also expressed concern that the longer this pause lasts, the more time Hamas has to build back capabilities and attack Israel again. If Israel decides to resume military operations, then Hamas may kill some hostages in retribution, and that is only likely to put further pressure on Netanyahu. It might also force the hand of the Israeli military into taking more brutal action in Gaza. Remember, Israel has been facing very harsh criticism in the last 50 days for the kind of pictures that have been coming out of Gaza, the bombardment of women, children, civilians who have nothing to do with Hamas, or this terror attack which started it all. Hamas can use this pause to easily buy at least another 10 to 20 more days of relief from the Israeli military, saying it's going to release more and more hostages. And this could give Hamas time to regroup and recover. The big problem for Israel is this, that the most important commanders of Hamas, the leadership of this terror group, which was directly responsible for the October 7th attacks, among them Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif, are both believed to have fled to southern Gaza along with the fleeing millions. They are suspected to have mixed themselves along with the civilian population there, as well as some of the hostages. So far, Israel has not struck southern Gaza, and it's kept its operations confined to northern Gaza. But in order to eliminate the Hamas leadership, which is one of the stated objectives of the Israeli military, they will have to inevitably go further south, and that means the possibility of more and more civilian casualties. Clearly, for Israel, this is a Hobson's choice. They are damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's not all. On Sunday, the Egyptian government also said that about 208 trucks had entered Gaza, including 7 trucks which were carrying about 100,000 liters of fuel. Later on Sunday, it also said another 100-odd trucks had entered, including 2 that were carrying fuel and 2 which had cooking gas. And that number of trucks is expected to increase as we enter the 4th day. Hamas and its allies have seized an estimated 240 hostages when they attacked southern Israel last month. The attacks, which were the worst on Israeli soil since at least the end of the Arab-Israeli war in the late 60s and the Yom Kippur War in the mid-70s, have killed over 1,000 Israelis, most of them civilians. In response, Israel has launched a massive air and ground operation over the last month and a half in which over 13,000 Palestinians have died.